Hi, everyone. My name is Gary Gomes, coming to you from a slightly different background this time. It's Sunday, May 16th. I have to look at the calendar. And welcome to the show where we talk about Vedic astrology, what's happening in the universe and in the world, and how Vedic astrology and astrology in particular affects all our lives. My name is Gary Gomes. I've been a Vedic astrologer for roughly 30 years now. I've also been a past president of the Council of Vedic Astrology, and also I teach at Kepler College, American College of Vedic Astrology, and a variety of other places. I also do one-on-one instruction, and I do readings. We have a store which is currently being renovated called Crystal Expectations in Brock Avenue. It's a little bit in disarray right now because we are renovating, but we'll be opening pretty soon, or reopening pretty soon. The main thing that I talk about on these broadcasts, I'll talk a little bit about numerology. I have a lot of casts around me today. I'll talk a little bit about numerology as well today, but this is a very important month, a very important week upcoming, and we have a lot of activity going on. So I'm going to jump right into it because we have a little bit to cover. But first of all, again, I want to acknowledge the program I'm going to have with Lolita Donatello Riedbach coming up very, very soon. It'll be a delightful experience for, I'm sure, for both of us. She's a very smart young lady, and she's very expert in remedial measures and ways you can sort of like turn the planetary problems in your chart to your advantage. And I've always been a big fan of that. It's one of the reasons that drew me. It's one of the things that drew me to Vedic astrology. So while I realize we do have to do a lot of inner work on ourselves, I also like the idea that we can get a little bit of assistance by strengthening planets or strengthening planetary energies in our charts, or taking advantage of good opportunities in our charts. So we'll be focusing a bit on that. We'll also be focusing a bit on mundane astrology, and we'll be focusing on some of the more esoteric sides of astrology. So we really don't have a set format yet, but I think you'll find it really interesting and really pleasant. And I hope you tune in. All right, so I have a cat gracing my presence. This is Flash. I don't think you can see him. I'm just gonna scope the camera down a little bit so you can see there's Flash on getting his 15 minutes of fame. And we'll get back to the show. All right. All right. So also, let me know if you prefer the format I use. Excuse me. I tend to do a minimum of editing on these shows, as you probably tell, and part of that is really um, um, a lack of time, but I hope to make time to do that. I also have to get some editing software, and I'll do that as well. But tell me if you'd like to see more graphics. I'm sure all of you would. I know it can get a little bit dull just looking at me, although I am the most handsome man in astrology. Uh, just looking at me for an hour or so, and just looking at charts for an hour or so. And I'm going to share the screen right now, and we'll go directly to the chart. So if you like formats, if you like need more scripted, I tend to do these things pretty off the cuff. It's just an old habit I developed from being involved in music. I don't like a lot of pre-planning. I think it ruins the moment, but for some people, pre-planning makes the piece. So essentially, let's go to the chart for today. And like I said, that's me. And how your tolerance for this kind of behavior may involve your energy level, my energy level. My energy level is pretty high today. Other days it's not so high. And editing can sort of smooth out the rough spots. But these are hour-long programs. I realize that, and that's not really, that's a long commitment of time. So, all right. So as we look right now, let me just change the location. This is the chart for today, and then we're going to look at the chart for the eclipse, which I think is a really important chart. So this is Los Angeles at this time, which would be a few hours from now. All right, and this changed it to New Bedford. All right, so astrology charts, just to go back to the basics, astrology charts are set up at a certain time and place. Okay, so there's going to be a slight variation in astrology charts. Also, the numerology this month is kind of interesting. I'm going to digress for, it's one of my famous digressions, but numerology is one of the foundations of astrology. It's one of the foundations of tarot. It's one of the foundations of how we structure the universe. And I was just discussing with a student how essentially, if you understand chaos theory, chaos theory essentially means that one action can form an action, and there are multiple iterations which can trigger multiple iterations, which can trigger multiple iterations. So most people look upon it, they're most familiar with it from what's called the butterfly effect. And the butterfly effect is essentially I take an action, the beating of the wings of a butterfly can cause a typhoon in the Pacific. So just that one action can cause a series of events which can actually cause something much more major across the world. If you have that kind of a belief system, then astrology is not so far-fetched. And chaos theory is actually used scientifically because essentially something like a coastline is not really a straight line. So essentially a coastline is really, if you think in terms of a coastline, it's really like literally thousands of miles. So essentially, if you follow the outline of a coastline and you measure every single, so measurements are just approximations, as most of us know. So if you have, let's say, a coastline which is really, let's say, 55 miles, if you start measuring every nook, cranny, deviation, variation, variation, you'll have really almost an infinite number of miles that make up a coastline. You'll have literally thousands of miles that make up a single coastline, because every single measurement, every single turn is not measured. And if you look over here at these Mahadasha levels, so Indian astrology is built on planetary periods. Planetary periods are essentially, they're like this set of events that happen within each other, and they happen within essentially small moments. So essentially what happens in one small moment, like right down here on May 23rd, if a person does an event in like the smallest cycle, and there's a because these are 5 levels down. So you start with a major level, which is Jupiter, and then you go all the way down to Mars. You'll see that you'll see that how a person reacts upon that particular day can have long-term ramifications or effects on what they do for the rest of their lives. So it isn't just major events, and the big events or the big encounters we have in our life have to do with when we encounter where planets are on the charts. So essentially, if I have a planet which is involved with another planet or with the moon or with the sun, and that triggers an event or it triggers some kind of past karma or past action that I've taken in my chart, that'll be a significant event for me to overcome or to use. So essentially there are all these choices that are being made. So yes, it's destiny, but there are these very small choices that are being made. And these larger things called rituals, they can actually break patterns of behavior. And that's not at all. So if we're looking at a chart, yes, these are things that you're destined to encounter. These are events which you're supposed to encounter. Your reaction to them, what action you take in connection with them, determines your future. And this gets into like all sorts of other things, which I'm not going to discuss here, but alternate timelines and multiple universes and things like that. And multiple universe theory is not something which just exists in Marvel Comics and DC Comics. It's an actual scientific theory which has actually been used to explain how the Big Bang manifested without anything being present at the start. So essentially it gets back into the origins of the universe. So it's the stuff we're talking about is not only cosmic, it's cosmic with a big C, with a capital C. I say it actually goes back to the origin of the universe. But let's wind it back a bit, and we'll talk about where the planets are today. And you'll see right now, again, because of the time I'm recording, the moon is in Leo. I'm sorry, the rising sign is Leo. The sun is the Lord of the 10th house. So essentially, I can even give you an example of why I'm talking the way I'm talking. We have the second house ruler is Mercury, aspected by Mars. Now, make me more aggressive in my speech, more assertive in my speech. So Mars aspect in the second house. And I'm talking second house lords in the 10th house, so I'm talking publicly about it. The 10th house is the house of action. So I'm talking about something I love. Sun and Venus are in conjunction. That's why I said I was the handsomest astrologer in the world. I really don't think that, although you're welcome to if you want to. And there's also this Rahu combination down here. Now, Rahu is really, I would say, one of the most misinterpreted planets in Vedic astrology. In this combination, it forms a really powerful Raj Yoga, or a great combination. Okay, so with Sun, especially with Sun and Rahu in conjunction in this sign, and Venus is in its own sign, Taurus, and Mercury's in its friendly sign. So there's a lot of focus on gains and financial improvement. Okay, so that's where a lot of people are right now. Rahu gives a little bit of frustration. It'll allow us to talk about big events like theories of physics and things like that, which I got into from a layman's term, a layman's perspective, and I probably did a really bad job from a scientific perspective. But basically, Venus and Rahu in conjunction will give that kind of like feeling of dissatisfaction with comforts, feeling that you're not getting a fair shake. And this is across the board. This is everybody is feeling this. It's not just one, it's not just left or right wing, it's everybody feels this right now. And the villain in our theme is essentially the government or the leaders. And I'm not saying the government necessarily down in Washington, but the people who are essentially leading us. And Mercury, and I'm communicating, Mercury's in the 10th house, so there's a lot of focus on communications as well. No, you can't. No, you can't do that. No, I'm gonna take it down. I swear to God, I'm gonna take it down. I'm gonna close the window. You don't stop. And okay, let's see now. And so let's all right. So all right. So I had to chastise my cat. Sorry about that. And okay. And as as so and also Mars is with Moon right now, so this is going to make us a little bit more aggressive than normal. Um, so our thoughts are really geared towards action or making things happen. We want big things to happen. We want things to happen quickly. K2's in Scorpio, where it's been for a while now. It's going to be there until around March of next year. And essentially, that K2 Rahu axis is what's going to cause the eclipse on May 26th. Jupiter's in the 7th house, so that's good. Jupiter's in the sign of Aquarius. It's in is he in it's in Dhanishta Nakshatra, so it's more interested in drums and rallying up people and getting people excited than it is about solving things. After about a month or so, you'll see Jupiter actually sooner than that. You'll see Jupiter enter inside of Vishak Nakshatra, and you'll see people more concerned with curing things and helping things out and distributing medicines and trying to get to the bottom of why is taking so long for Corona um, to get resolved. Saturn's about to go retrograde. It isn't quite retrograde yet, but we're going to see ourselves replaying some of the same efforts and struggles we have before, we have previously. And the Saturn retrograde will probably slow down the economy just a little bit, but it will also make people um, less anxious, less dubious about the future. It's not really a bad combination for Saturn to be retrograde. One of the things I'm noticing is there's a special lugna called the Sri Lugna, which is placed in Aquarius right now. So this is actually a very fortunate period for people whose rising sign, sun sign, or moon sign is Aquarius, because it's actually giving them a period in which they'll get a lot of money. It doesn't mean you're going to become millionaires, but it's pretty good. It's going to be a very good time for these individuals. And Jupiter's aspecting Mars and the Moon, which is a good combination. But the Jupiter aspect on Mars is making certain countries, namely Israel, I would say, but also certain other countries, a little bit more aggressive than they normally are. And so when we have combinations like this, is a time for some conflicts, some governmental dissatisfaction. So there's going to be a lot of, I don't know if you've seen the recent headlines. There's a lot of tension between the Democrats and the Republicans. I mean, personally, in Washington and even in other countries as well. And that should abate somewhat when Sun, or after around June 15th, when Sun moves into Gemini. But for the time being, you'll see various people rather unhappy with government and rather unhappy with leadership. And like I said, this is nonpartisan. This is on either side. And it'll really be about financial matters. There'll be a lot of anxiety about financial matters because of the sun with Rahu and Taurus. Now, Rahu does well in the sign. So again, the speculation, um, the speculative markets won't hurt that badly. They have seen some decline, but they won't hurt that badly. As soon as the sun moves into Gemini, they'll bounce back up again. But basically, for the next few weeks, I think you're going to see um, a lot of activity and a lot more panic-stricken behavior than you normally would, mainly because of Rahu's influence on the sun. Now, let's go ahead to the eclipse, because this is kind of a special eclipse. Also, romantic energy is very high this month, so people want to be in love. That's really what the Rahu Venus combination does. It sort of like supercharges that emotion, and it supercharges that feeling that connected with other people that we want. So I think also, to be honest with you, it causes some dissatisfaction with current relationships. So people are always looking at the horizon to see what new relationship they could get into, or who would be an ideal person for them. But when we go to this actual May 26th eclipse, I want to go to that right now just to show you what's going on right now. Let me go back to May 16th for just 1 second, because I want to show you where the astrocartography lines are. Now, this is the fun part of our show. Okay, time and space change. Let's see, astro mapping. And so this is right now, as of May 16th. And surprise, surprise, we have a Mars line running through the Middle East. Okay, it's running through Turkey, or actually, there's a descending Mars line running through Turkey, south of Istanbul. So again, there can be some sea issues or problems with earthquakes or panics down there. If we look over at Israel, there's a moon line. So the moon is with Mars as we talk right now in Israel, and there's also a Saturn line intersecting. Excuse me. There's a Saturn line intersecting that Mars line, which is essentially nobody's going to be happy with each other right now. If we go over, so I want to look at the problem spots in the world first, and then we'll look at the good spots. So there's not a lot happening in the middle of this body of water over here, the South Indian Ocean, north of Antarctica. So we see a Mars line moving through Michigan, Indiana, and down to Louisiana. So that area's got to be really careful about its weather patterns and possibilities of violence. Also down through Central America. There's a Rahu Mercury line, Rahu Mercury Venus line. So California, Washington, and Oregon, and parts of Nevada are in for some panic. And I'm thinking maybe disease related or governmental panic. I know there's a recall petition that's been passed around for the current governor of California. That may pick up some steam around this time. And also, but I am worried about this Mars line, because this is really, Mars is in Gemini right now. It's kind of a violent combination. It's going to be going over Rahu's nakshatra, and that's not good. And the moon is passing over Ohio, roughly Ohio, um, North Carolina, Virginia, South Carolina, and Florida. So I think you're going to see some more um, unrest, and also over Peru, and looks like I'm not sure that's Bolivia. Ixinoli is much better. Um, Sunline, so some dissatisfaction with the government is indicated in Brazil, but that's not surprising. Also, Argentina. So you may see the government of Argentina start to crack down a little bit more. You may see the government of Brazil start to crack down a little bit more over the next few weeks. You have a Venus Rahu line passing over England, so they're experiencing problems with um, uh, the COVID mutate that appeared in India, and so that may cause some more problems for them. I think you're going to see a lot of these issues. So um, resolved, if not within a month, then pretty quickly after that. Also, if we go over here, we have a Mercury line coming through Portugal and Spain and France. So you're getting a lot of news over there, a lot of panic about finances. And you have Mars passing through what I believe is Algeria and then up into Turkey, as I said before. So there will be some violence in Turkey, some possibility of earthquakes, but again, like I said, Istanbul does not look like it's hit. It's south of Istanbul. And I would even hesitate to say that. I think it's going to be more aggressive action. The moon is, so again, we have the moon, which is a very public planet, passing close to Israel, and Saturn crossing close to Israel and Saudi Arabia, and finally Jupiter in Iran. So it looks like Jupiter's going to get some help to Iran because they had a big problem with COVID, and up through Russia. India looks like it's not going to be interfered with all that much by planetary lines this month. They do have a Mars line to the east, and again, there is a possibility of a Sino Indian conflict, and Moon is in China. So again, I would watch those two countries for conflict over the next few months. The other parts that look like they'll have some problems are Eastern China, Philippines, and down through Australia. And there's a Rahu line passing through China as well. So China looks like it's getting slammed pretty hard. But it's also affecting Japan, and there'll be some panic in the news in Japan as well. So let's go ahead to the eclipse. Let's go back to the eclipse chart. And this is the May 26th chart. So the eclipse is kind of interesting because we have Sun, Venus, and Rahu all together in the same sign. So that will give a lot of focus on beauty and relationships and forming new relationships. The actual eclipse point occurs in Virgo, roughly. This is not an exact time of the eclipse, but you can see the sun. Rahu's at 1628, and Moon is down here at 1549. So I believe I actually looked up the actual eclipse time, the start of the eclipse for New Bedford. And this will cover, from what I recall, a large part of North America and Europe, but not much of Asia, from what I recall correctly. So North America, South America, and Europe. So we have 1, 2, 3, And the moon's in Scorpio during this eclipse, which is kind of makes it kind of a difficult eclipse, but there'll be a lot of passionate love, what I would call passionate love. So love which will seem to be either unwise or unfettered will take place. And Rahu will give a lot of desire to people. But Rahu and Venus and Sun will also give some financial panic. So you should expect this to happen a few days before and a few days after the eclipse. I'll talk about it more next week too. Mars and Mercury are in the 10th house of the chart. So this will give a lot of political life. It won't just happen in the United States, it'll happen around the world. But you may even see the United States lying about its intentions to its allies because of that Mars-Mercury conjunction in the 7th house, and that's in the U.S.'s chart. Saturn is retrograde by this time. As you can see, that little underline means Saturn's retrograde. Pluto is retrograde, but I don't pay that much attention to Pluto, not because I'm a jerk, but because I see a lot of other things that Pluto causes as being caused by Rahu and Ketu. And look, this is an unusual phenomenon. Rahu and Ketu are direct. That's like, that happens only if you use a certain way of measuring the North Lunar Nodes, and only rarely during the year. So when Rahu and Ketu are direct, big events happen. Okay, so this doesn't mean you're going to have monstrous events or great tragedies happen, but Rahu and Ketu do tend to cause at least some kind of a disruption. And when they're direct, they become more powerful. It's like retrogrades when they're so this will give the rise and fall of some great institution or political leader. If we're talking about, or it'll give a scandal connected with political leaders internationally. If we're looking at the most likely places for this to happen, we're looking at the time-space changes. Checking. So the most likely problems to politicians will be from Texas, through Mexico, through really North and South Dakota, like right in the middle of the United States. Also because the seat of government is over here, and we have a Venus-Mercury conjunction. It'll give a lot of problems to leaders in Brazil, and even DC. Mercury and Mars prepare for a strong bout of misrepresentation from, and like I said, this is from both parts. This isn't partisan. This is everybody's going to be involved in this mess. And essentially, Mars is going to give some violence in Brazil, and probably a little bit in Paraguay and Uruguay, but not that much. Now, if we move over here to where Europe is, England is largely unscathed except for a Rahu line, which is passing through Ireland and from Portugal. So you may hear about more COVID panic and more panic with the government in those two countries, and maybe even in England, because there is talk, I know, of Scottish independence, and that can be very disruptive to England. The other thing that I look at in terms of this chart for, let's say, a problem area is I would look at Italy, Greece, Northern Europe, and we have three lines. So Venus, Rahu, and Mercury are passing through Turkey, Eastern Turkey, Istanbul and Ankara. So there'll be some kind of a financial scandal out there, some kind of a financial or entertainment scandal out there going on. And if I were to, or communication scandal, if I were to look at points where I would expect violence, I would be looking at, and this would actually hold true through Russia as well. If I'm looking at Mars line, Mars is passing through Iran and Syria, passing through Central Russia rather, excuse me, and Saturn is passing through Western India. So you're going to see Western India face some severe problems connected with poverty and disease. Okay, over there as a result of this eclipse, and eclipse patterns tend to last for quite a few months. They don't just show up and go away. Now, again, it's going to depend on how close a person is, how close a person's planets are to eclipse points, how far away they are, and keep something in mind. This month is going to give great opportunities to people to break out of their shells. I'll get back to the world in a second, but to break out and change their course of behavior. That's one of the things eclipses do. So they're disruptive, yes. They're uncomfortable, yes. Are they always harmful? Not always. Usually, if there's a cluster of planets around them, they'll be really, really bad. But right now, we only have Venus and Sun involved, Venus, Sun, and Moon involved. That's going to affect long-term relationships, that's for sure. But a lot of other activities in life will be affected. Sun Rahu goes through, Eastern India. So even though India, I believe, is not on the path of the eclipse, it'll still be affected because of this line right here. So the government overreaching in Eastern India, and the moon and it becoming very public in Eastern India, although there will be a Jupiter line there to save the day. But this will actually cause some reforms in India. This you'll see a lot of reforms in India over the next 6 months. Same is true of China. And I think you can actually count on that to happen in the middle of the United States. You'll see some reforms happening, and also in Mexico, and also in what I call the near Western states like Nevada, New Mexico, and Utah. The other thing I want to keep in mind is there will probably be some communications problems and some scandals within the government in Thailand, Laos, and Cambodia. Cambodia is still not stabilized as far as I can tell. And Mars is passing through Japan, so Japan had better be careful of earthquakes or sea tragedies. Same is true of New Guinea, and the same is true of Australia. The one thing which is rare is Jupiter's passing over New Zealand, and it's been rare over the past few months. It doesn't mean New Zealand never gets a planetary path over it, but I've noticed that they've been relatively ineffective. But there will be some medical issues, but New Zealand will actually sort of like feature well in the news over the next few months. It'll actually come out looking pretty good. But the areas I'm most worried about are East India and China. Roughly Northern Africa through down here through the region next to Gabon, and England through Italy. And in the United States, I'm concerned about major disruptions roughly between Texas and North and South Dakota and Louisiana. Now we had those hackers that interfere with the oil supply, so I'm thinking this will be an extension of that over the coming month or so. I'm thinking that we'll have increased problems with ransom hacking or with ransomware, and it'll probably affect Texas the most, but it'll also affect Washington, D.C., and it'll also affect Ohio. And a lot of these attacks, these Venus-Mercury attacks, I think are going to be because Venus is directly affected by Rahu in the chart. And Venus essentially governs computer software. That's a little surprising fact a lot of people don't know. But Venus is essentially connected very strongly with computer software and with computers. So a lot of these lines where they show Venus and Mercury, I'm worried about computer attacks. Okay? So those areas, so essentially this could be what's happening in Istanbul or in Turkey in general, Russia. You know, there's a lot of, let's go back to the chart itself. Just trying to make sure we're still talking. And it looks like we are. Okay, so I think that when we look at the chart, governments, because of the sun being afflicted by Rahu and Ketu, media or celebrity media, marriages, and also a lot of discoveries about, I would call about lies in the media. And again, like I said, not just from one side. It's, you know, enough parties to blame on both sides. I think this particular eclipse is going to be rather profound because it'll reveal a lot of things that happen behind the scenes. So I'm not by occupation or inclination a conspiracy theorist. Do I think that people get together and decide on strategies on how they want to address things? Yes, absolutely. You know, that's the way the world works. That's not really being a conspiracy theorist. That's essentially people actually sit down and work out agendas. And I mean, but there are also understandings between people that they don't want certain things to happen. So there are public agendas and there are private agendas. So I'm not saying any of this is evil. Quite the contrary, I think it's rather natural. The other thing that concerns me about this particular eclipse is Venus is in debilitation in the Navamsha chart. So this is going to make relationship life really tough for a lot of people. And there'll be a lot of fighting about money and things like that. So just try to be calm, try to stay stable, try to stay patient with your partner, and work it out. Let's go back to the chart for today, so I can give you a forecast for the next week or so. And essentially, what I would say, if I'm looking at Aries, which is up here, we have that big Uranus up there in Aries. And while I don't use Western astrology, that's kind of tough to beat, to miss. But Aries is really in love with love right now. It wants something shocking or surprising to happen to it in love. And I can get the same thing by looking at the A5, get rid of the fifth house in Aries, and also by the Lord of Aries being with the moon over here. So I don't need this big Uranian influence, you know. So in terms of people's affections are changing right now, especially if they're an Aries sun. They're dissatisfied with money. This has been a situation for a long time. It's going to be a situation for a while until early next year. and then Aries will become super popular, and people will be throwing money at it as a sign. But that Venus combination will put a lot of focus on how they look, how they talk, how they express themselves, and they'll come across maybe as being a little bit self-centered, but it's really that they feel like they're being part. And in part, that's true because they're very bright, and Aries is naturally a star among the planets, and that Venus Rahu conjunction means it's frustrated romantically. So I think you'll see them start to actually grab or develop a lot of attraction over the next month or so, and you'll start to develop into a romantic relationship. Mars in the third house, they're very courageous. They want to make changes. They're actually anxious to make changes. And it's not just about relationship life. They want to changes in terms of career. They want more success, more status in career. Saturn's in the 10th house, and Jupiter's in the 11th house. So they'll finally start getting some money over the next few months. But Sri Lagna is in the 12th house, so they'll have to get it maybe from overseas. And finally, if I look at the 7th house in the chart, 7th house is ruled by Libra, is ruled by Venus, it's Libra. Again, relationship dissatisfaction or the need to be with somebody exotic or unique is very strong in this chart for Aries. Now for Taurus, Taurus itself is very conflicted about what it wants. It's very eager to have a family, very focused on family, very aggressive, very talkative. Mars in the 2nd house will make it very, very hard driving. And Moon in the 2nd house, Lord of the 3rd, they're going to want money, they're going to want recognition, they're going to want fame. And this combination is very, very strong for actually generating fame. They have Jupiter in the 10th house, Saturn in the 9th house. It's fame that they've worked for a long time that they're trying to achieve right now. They want relationship life. Mars and Moon is in the 2nd house. They will have a change in relationship life for the better, and you'll start to see them get much more focused on relationships and much more sociable and much more testing out people. Still not sure what they want, but testing out people who they can engage in relationship activities. Financially, they'll do well. The first 2 signs, as a matter of fact, the first 3 signs are in fairly good shape financially. But in terms of Gemini has a lot of focus on earnings. They'll have a lot of friends. It's Adana Yoga. They have the 2nd Lord in the 1st house. So Cancer's Lord, the Moon is in the 1st house, but the 11th house Lord is, and the 11th house Lord is in the 1st house. So that's very good for money. But this chart feels like it's being ignored or it isn't being paid as much attention to as it would like to be. And that's because of the Lord's placement in the 12th house. So you'll start to see a change in their status over the next month or so, especially when Venus enters this sign around June 1st. Cancer has kind of a tough month ahead of it. It's going to have relationship issues. There are going to be fights or arguments with relationship partners. However, money luck looks good because the root of the 9th house is in this chart, and the 11th house. They'll get money, but again, like I said, it won't seem like enough. That's pretty much one of the conditions of this chart. It'll start to stabilize. It'll start to look like enough after about 15 days. The other thing is 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Venus is, so there'll be some disruption in home life, but a lot of career aggression, a lot of career focus, so that they'll feel really, really excited about career matters. They'll actually rise to a position of relative fame in their career. The other, and a lot of financial gains. Relationship life will be hard for them. It'll seem like a struggle. It'll seem kind of boring, uh, but it'll also seem stable. The time when they should really be careful about relationship patterns is after this eclipse, because this eclipse will put a lot of unseemly thoughts into their minds. And the same is true of Leo, which we'll get to in a second. But basically, they should watch out for their health. Uh, Saturn's aspect in the first, but they will actually get more financial gains and more career gains from, especially from legacies or from places they didn't expect. For Leo, Leo has um, no planets in it, but the Eruda for the ninth house is in it, so that makes the sign very, very lucky. The sun is in the same sign with Rahu, so it'll make him famous this month. And also, this will help in terms of cancer. So you'll see a lot of people with cancer moons or cancer suns developing a lot of fame or a lot of recognition this month. The other chart, the other factors in the chart, K2, some detachment from home life, more focus on career, more focus on friends, although they'll have disagreements with their friends. As Saturn is placed in the sixth house, they should watch out for their health and not to overextend themselves. Jupiter's in the seventh, they'll actually get lots of relationship offers. For Virgo, Virgo has K2 in the third house, so again, pretty fearless, not really afraid of anybody. They have a cluster of planets in the ninth house, including the Lord of the first house, which creates kind of a special combination for them. So they'll be famous. They'll be famous as teachers. They'll have a lot of recognition as teachers. They'll have a lot of energy for work with Mars in the 10th house. And they'll also have a lot of, let me just see now. There'll also be a lot of arguments at home, though. A lot of arguments about how to use money or how to spend money. But money is strong for this chart, and it'll start to really sink in about the next couple of months. You'll start seeing more money come in. For Libra, Libra is very critical overall from the chart. It has, but it's good for property. This particular placement, you have Mars and Moon in the 10th house, or in the ninth house. So you have a combination of the second and the seventh and the 10th Lord. So this indicates business partnership, probably with a person of the opposite gender, and it's a good time for this sign to start business partnerships. The Saturn in the fifth house is really good for hard work. So a lot of this sign will benefit extraordinarily well from hard work. Most signs do, I'm not saying that, but this sign in particular really does. And it's lucky if it works hard. And Jupiter's in the sixth house, so it'll have some problems with advisors or teachers. It won't be that bad. But overall, career-wise, it looks pretty good for this sign, very good for this sign. And in terms of unexpected financial gains or financial boosts, it looks pretty great. The only problem is friendships will be a little bit isolated. Relationship life is going to be a lot of fights or a lot of changes. The person will want different relationship partners or be have kind of a wandering eye. Jupiter will assist that because Jupiter's in the fifth house. Will give opportunities for that kind of thing as well. So this sign will have to be very careful about keeping its resources close to home. If this Libra is single, if the person who's Libra is single, it's a great opportunity for romantic involvements. But I wouldn't take them too seriously because of the Venus-Rahu conjunction. I would try to see if they have any staying power when Venus goes into Gemini within about 2 weeks. Scorpio has no planets in it, but it has Saturn in the third. So again, they have a lot of grit, this sign, a lot of a lot of energy. The fourth house has to do with education, so this sign will be attracted very strongly to education. Sun, Venus, and Rahu are in the seventh house, so again, more opportunities for romantic partnerships, more direct, not clandestine, as in Libra's case, opportunities. But this sign will also be a little bit discouraged or downhearted because the ruler of Scorpio, Mars, the traditional ruler of Scorpio, is in the eighth house. So this sign will feel just a little bit isolated or just a little bit shy. For Sagittarius, Sagittarius still has that Saturn in the second house, but it will get better for it. Jupiter's in the third house. Saturn's in the second, so it'll restrict money just a little bit, restrict optimism just a little bit, but Jupiter's in the third house, is building an optimism. And Sun, Venus, Rahu, Mercury are in the sixth house, so this sign's going to have to be very careful about infections or any kinds of diseases. They may have arguments with spouses or relationship partners because of the Mars-Moon conjunction. And overall, career-wise, it looks okay, but I'm just trying to look at the chart. The Sun is in the sixth house, so career will move forward with intense work on your part. And overall, from the chart, it looks like to be like a fairly good month for you. I think there is some indication there'll be weakness connected with women or with the opposite gender in particular, or whichever gender you're attracted to. And that's the main thing to look out for is being weak or being susceptible to manipulation by people from by people you're attracted to. For Capricorn, Capricorn has Saturn in it. It forms a great personality yoga called a Sashi Yoga. As a matter of fact, there are two great personality yogas in this chart, depending on how you read it. Venus is in Taurus in its own sign, and it's in the 10th house, which is what's called a Grand Raj Yoga. And oh no, I'm sorry, Grand Raj Yoga. It's called a Malavya Yoga. My apologies. So Venus in its own sign in Taurus is a Malavya Yoga. I don't know where that came from. And Jupiter's aspecting Mars and the moon, so this will give this sign a lot of energy towards making money and towards improving themselves. So they're going to go to the gym. They're going to be very energetic. So it's a good time for the scientists to really start working very hard on getting in shape if it wants to do that, or very hard on self-improvement. The only flaw I see in this chart is you have Mars and Moon in the sixth house. So that'll give some problems with relationship life, some fights in relationships. It seems a lot of relationship partners are going to fight or want to break off over the next 6 months or so. And that's mainly because of the eclipse. And in terms of the rest of the chart, it looks pretty good. Jupiter's in the second house. That's very good. If we move to Aquarius next, Aquarius has Sri Lagna in the second house, although Saturn is in the 12th house, so it'll give a lot of expenses to that sign, obviously. Sun, Venus, Rahu, Mercury are in the 5th house. Again, strong potential for love affairs or romantic involvements if you're single or if you're not. So it represents certain jeopardy to marry people. It represents opportunities to relate to unmarried people. The thing to keep in mind is you will be attracted to somebody who's exotic or not from the same culture as you are if Rahu's involved. So it wouldn't be very surprising to find individuals with this combination essentially falling for somebody who seemed very exotic or very very big or very unusual looking. Excuse me. And overall career life looks good. K2 in the 10th house doesn't look really that great for career recognition, but it does give promising career life, and I think this sign will do pretty well. The last sign we're going to go to is Pisces, and again, domestic conflicts, desire for new spouse. You know, these are repeating themes in the chart, but they're very strong in the chart. And it will give spousal opportunities, you know, especially to people who are are involved and they want to be involved with somebody younger. The K2 in, so Saturn aspects the first house, so this will make that sign a little bit trying to think of the right word. A little bit cheap when it comes to money. They want to hold on to money pretty strongly. And the Sun Venus Rahu conjunction in the third house, a lot of dynamism in the chart, a lot of ambition, a lot of get up and go. Mars and Moon domestic life will not be peaceful, but it won't be harmful either. I think you'll start to see some good energies developing around this sign next time. And the charts pretty much are, I mean, they're all influenced pretty strongly by relationship factor or romantic factors. That's sort of like a common theme. I'll be back next week. If anybody wants to get in touch with me for a reading, they can email me at neivas@comcast.net or at Gary Gomes, GaryGomes, at gmail.com, or you can call me at 508-525-0001. I'd be happy, or you can text me as well. I'd be happy to talk with you. I hope you have a great week, and I'm just going to go out with namaste, and God bless you all. Remember, try new things. This is the month to try new things. Don't be afraid.